brain injuries. Judy Dettmer is the director of the Brain Injury Program of Colorado under the Colorado Department of Human Services. Liz Gerdeman is the director of professional programs for the Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado. We're very excited to hear their information today to help us better serve this population of our clientele. Before I turn things over to them, I'd like to do a couple of housekeeping things. There are sign-in sheets going around. If you have not already signed in, please do so and make sure I get those. I would appreciate that. If you want a certificate of completion, there are some on the counter over here for your personal records or for your continuing professional development. There are refreshments on the back counter. If you'd like to partake of those, please help yourself. And last but not least, outside these doors to my right are the restrooms. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Judy and Liz. Thank you so much for being here.
Everybody got a little remote clicker?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just so you guys know, we are recording this, and we're going to be talking into this little lavalier mic, so the audio can pick it up back there. I know it's really cool. So I'm Liz, and I'm going to actually start us off with resources, because typically we found that we go through trainings, and then the very end is when we talk about resources, and by then it's people are kind of tuned out. So we kind of want to start with what we think is most important. So I've been with the Brain Injury Alliance a little over 5 years now. We're a statewide nonprofit that serves people with brain injuries, and obviously Judy will talk about her role as well. But like I said, we're going to start with our services and how to refer to us, and then we're going to talk about brain injury, kind of do an overview of what that means. Judy's going to go into strategies and accommodations, and then how to screen for brain injury. So hopefully it'll be a comprehensive training. So these clickers that we have, we want to, they're completely anonymous. We want to understand if trainings like this are effective, and then we use that data to help apply for grants. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with that process. So the first two questions are just practice questions to get all the clickers registered. You don't have to press send, and if you want to change your answer, it will record the last number you press. If it's flashing red at you, that means you're pressing a number that isn't an option. So thank you for doing this. So the first part is kind of heavy with questions, and then we'll get into the content, and then we'll do some post questions at the end as well. But it really helps us collect data, so thank you for participating. About 35 people.
They're looking to change the channel. Okay, Chief, put these in the next budget. All right, nice.
Okay, so we just kind of want to understand your baseline level of knowledge about some of these things. So answer as honestly as you can, and then at the end we'll kind of see if that's changed over time. If you can't read that, let me know in the back. I can read that out loud for you.
Did you have a question?
You don't. Yeah. Just press the number. Okay. these topics right now. Yeah. I promise the whole presentation is not like that.
All of us have to speak. Introduce ourselves. That's a good question.
Everybody answer? Two more. And just so you guys know, we will be emailing out the PowerPoint, so you don't have to. Okay, couple more content questions and then we're done with this part.
So I can see what case that goes in.
Okay, so like I said, we're starting with resources first. Thank you for answering those questions. I appreciate it. Okay, so quick snapshot of our state and funding and services. So surcharges are collected on convictions of speeding tickets, DUIs, and the children's helmet law. And that goes to the Colorado Department of Human Services, the Colorado Brain Injury Program. That was established in 2002. So they receive this funding every year and divide it up into research grants, education grants, and services. Real quick snapshot of research and education grants. The research ones are multi-year, six-figure, pretty big grants that go to like the medical center when they're doing research on traumatic brain injury. Education grants, the request for proposals actually is out right now. I will forward you guys the link in case you're interested in applying for some funding. These are typically $10,000 over the course of a fiscal year and are just related to education about brain injury across the state. So I'll send you guys, do you want to say anything more about that?
This year, actually, we expanded it. We have 1-year option and a 2-year option. So if you have a longer educational initiative you're interested in, that one is up to 2 years for up to 20,000, and there's the 1 year for up to 10.
Yeah, so great opportunity for funding if you're interested. The majority of the funds, however, go to services. So the state, in statute, they're required to provide case management for youth and adults with traumatic brain injury. As of July 1st, the Brain Injury Alliance was awarded this contract. Previously, it was Rocky Mountain Human Services, so you guys may have heard of the trust fund, you may have been aware of RMHS providing those services. These we call Dettmer options. We changed our name, we were the association, Judy changed the name of their program, and Rocky Mountain Human Services changed their name. All while working with people with cognitive disabilities, so that was so it's been really confusing in the community. So just forget everything you might have known previously. Moving forward, we are the contractor for these services, we're the single entry point for these services. And so I'll talk a little bit more about what that is. We've been around since the 80s providing a number of different services for people with brain injuries. We're most known for our recreation programs. We do adaptive recreation up in Breckenridge, also one-day programs here on the Front Range, like paddle boarding, rock climbing, things like that. We also have a wealth of other programs. The case management now is our core service. We just hired 14 people, including individuals outside of Dettmer. We have somebody here in the Springs full-time. This is free. There is no income or insurance eligibility. A lot of people confuse us with Medicaid waiver case management. They think you have to be on Medicaid to even access this, and that is not the case. It doesn't matter what your income level is. If you have a medically documented brain injury and you need some support, you demonstrate ongoing impairment, we would be able to serve you. Any age, doesn't matter how long it's been since the injury, that comes up quite often. It doesn't matter if it's been 20 years. We also do workshops and classes. Previously, our workshops have cost like $25. Moving forward, they're all free because of our contract, which is great. So we'll be doing some in the spring of next year, and we'll be doing them across the state, so we'll probably be in your area, and we'll be doing webinars as well. So as soon as we have those out, I'll share those with you guys in case you have clients. Anybody in the community is welcome to attend those. Again, they're free. So we do conferences for professionals, and we can offer continuing education hours. So we have one coming up November 3rd and 4th at the Convention Center. Really great content with speakers from all over the country. So that's another service we offer to the community. Lots of really great online educational materials, professional networking groups. So there are these groups in different parts of the state that meet regularly to network and share resources. They're groups of professionals that have clients with brain injury. So physical therapists, social workers, mental health professionals, attorneys. The one here in the Springs meets once a month. I think it's on the 3rd Tuesday of the month at Health South Rehab Hospital. And they sometimes bring in speakers, they put together projects, they just meet over lunch and network, that kind of thing. So if you're interested in attending stuff like that, get to know other providers in your community, might be helpful. I mentioned our recreation programs. We also started music and art therapy classes out of our Denver office. We are hoping to expand those pretty soon. Those do have a cost of like $5 for drop-in classes, but everything else we do is free. You might be familiar with Energy Outreach Colorado. We can help pay people's energy bills if they're late or threatening to be late. We have this great online resource directory where you can look for different providers, 800 entries in there from all across the state. Support groups all over the place. So, I think I have a slide. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about our case management. So, like I said, we just started this July 1st. We are using kind of a team approach, so it looks a little bit different than it did previously, if you guys were familiar with that program. Every client that comes in gets a phone-based case manager, and so this individual can provide any sort of remote support, whether it's obviously via the phone, but also email, text, webinar, or video conferencing, and help their clients work through goals. But if they need an in-person case manager, if they have some more intensive needs, we also have in-person case managers across the state as well. So they can provide support with filling out applications, going to doctor's appointments. Maybe they need some organization support in their home. That's something our case managers would do. A great example is if once somebody sustained a brain injury and they can't drive and they need to take public transportation, but they have a little bit of anxiety our in-person case managers would be able to go with them and kind of show them the ropes. So that's what our case management looks like. We really take a proactive approach, and then instead of waiting for somebody to contact us when they're in crisis, we have some regularly scheduled check-in calls with them, just to kind of see how things are going. It's over the course of 2 years, but if an individual needs to stay engaged with their case manager after 2 years, it's a really easy process to stay involved in that program. Like I said, we have a full-time case manager down here. We have a half-time person out on the Western Slope, Central Mountain region, half-time person in Fort Collins, and then several people in Dettmer, and that is just due to population. Educational materials, we've got some really great tip cards that we send out to clients on things like memory strategies, coping skills, fatigue management, things like that. Also some great materials for caregivers and family members. I mentioned the classes and workshops. What's great is for youth, so we have a specialist on staff who's a school psychologist by trade, and she provides specialized consultation around how that brain injury is going to play out in the classroom and what accommodations that kid might need and what transition is going to look like and if they need to change schools, who to talk to at that school. So she's a really great resource. She's full-time August through May during the school year. And again, this is all free, it's all provided through our contract. So try to kind of cover all of our bases. Right now, eligibility, they do need to be lawfully present in the state of Colorado. Judy is working with the AG's office to potentially open that up a little bit more, which would be great. But right now, they obviously need to be here in Colorado for us to work with them. And they do need to have a medically documented brain injury. But if they don't, and they have a credible history of brain injury, but the records, were so long ago, we can help them with that. So don't let that be a barrier to applying. We can also help them fill out the application. It used to be 11 pages, it's now 6 pages, so we're really trying to make it easier to get into services. Any questions about our case management, brain injury lines in general, resources?
Yeah, how can we get those tip sheets?
So typically there are 4 clients in the program. I'm happy to, I'll show you where we got them from if you guys are interested in ordering some to get them in bulk. But I can give you a couple samples to kind of see what they look like. We've got a ton on our website though it's all free and downloadable. So I'll send you links for that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Liz, do you want to explain how, even if they have a case manager, this could still be an extension of a benefit?
Yeah, so that comes up quite a bit because people do have case managers with other entities, and we are not intending to duplicate services whatsoever. We understand, for example, that waiver case managers have limitations on what they can do, how often they can see their clients because they have pretty huge caseloads, and things like that. And so our goal is to kind of fill in the gaps. We have a lot more flexibility with our case management program. One of the first things we do when a client comes into services is figure out who else are they working with in the community. Are they working with DDR? Are they working with you guys? Are they working with their local single entry point? So and then we get releases so that we can talk to other professionals that they're working with and collaborate. So I think, again, it's not to duplicate services. Obviously there are a ton of case management services out there. I know you guys provide a variation of that as well. So I think it's just, we can be another team member we work with brain injury all day, every day. We understand these clients and we can provide kind of another set of hands for anything that might come up, especially if it's related to the brain injury. Any questions? Yeah.
Will you send out information about how to refer a client to this?
Yes, and I think that's great segue.
Let me help.
So there are a couple different ways. The ideal way is to help them with the application or give them the application and encourage them to fill it out because that streamlines them into services. So I will send out a link for that as well as a copy of the application. There's also this form on our website that's really great for professionals. If you only have a few minutes with them, that you want to make sure they get connected with us, you can fill out this form about them, obviously with their permission, and then we will follow up and we'll send them an application and we'll help them with that sort of thing. So that obviously can take a little bit longer because we have to get in touch with them, we have to send them the application and get it back. Whereas if you can give them the application right then and there, that would be ideal and that speeds everything up. So I'll send you both. options. We have materials that I'll give you guys, but I've just really found in doing outreach that, especially with this population, if you hand them, you know, a phone number, they're probably gonna lose it, whether it's due to memory loss or disorganization or initiation issues. We're really asking the community and professionals in the community to make that connection happen. So if you guys could, call us with them, fill out this form, fill out the application, tell them what to do, that kind of thing, that would be really great, and that just ensures the connection takes place. Did that answer your question? Yes. Any other questions? Yes.
Case of the care.
I'm sorry?
How many numbers are you talking about?
I think the in-person case managers are under 50. I think it's 30 to 40 right now.
And then how many managers do you have?
We have 14.
Wow. So 6 or 7 managers.
Yeah.
Plus the phone-based case managers can handle a few hundred people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what Liz, talked about, ideally, we've had wait lists in the past in this program, and it's been very challenging. We typically serve over 1,000 adults with brain injury a year, 100 or so kids with brain injury a year. And so, their model, we're hoping, really helps to eliminate that wait list so that the info case managers can do some of that immediate response. But if someone needs more intensive support and needs to have, you know, the ability to have someone help them complete an application or forms, that we have that available as well.
Any other questions about that? Okay, well, hopefully you guys will refer some clients to us. Judy, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so, I don't know how many of you are aware, if all of you are aware, but, a few years ago when the contract was put out by Healthcare Policy and Finance, and you guys bid on contract and were awarded to be one of the BHOs for this region, there were some different practice standard guidelines that were put into place. So previously, it was very confusing for folks in mental health centers and BHOs to know when do they serve someone with a brain injury, do they serve someone with a brain injury, and or not. And so we worked, myself and others worked with the Department of Healthcare Policy and Finance to come up with a clearer practice standard. And so we kind of wanted to get a sense what you all understand of this, but so before, if someone had a brain injury, it was kind of a rule out, right? Does that sound familiar to folks? Okay, so if they had a traumatic brain injury, it ended up kind of ruling them out for supports and services. Then about, I don't know how many years ago, I'm losing track, but anyway, a decade ago probably, or a little shorter than that, the practice standard was changed to say, if they have a brain injury and a co-occurring behavioral health concern, then you should assess to see if they have a covered diagnosis, but it didn't go into treatment. And so people were still feeling if they had a brain injury that caused the mental health problem, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, something like that, then again, the thought was that you didn't treat. So we went back this last round, I think we got it right, but we're still hearing some concerns from our consumers that they're getting turned away for services, so we want to make sure we're on target with folks. Now, the practice standard says, if they have a brain injury and they have a presenting concern, you must assess, right, to see if they have a covered diagnosis of a behavioral health condition. If they have that covered diagnosis, then you will treat that person. You're not treating the brain injury. And I think that's where advocates in the brain injury community got crossways with, and not intentionally, I just think it was a misunderstanding, with the HICCUP in terms of, we were just saying, you guys have the skills to treat all mental health issues, that's what you do, right? And you're clinicians, et cetera. And it was getting kind of bogged down with, if you have a brain injury, we gotta treat your brain injury, and that requires specialists and all these things. When we are truly just saying, no, you're treating the mental health concern in the context of understanding that they have a brain injury. And so as we go through today, you'll see kind of some of the hallmarks of brain injury that you might want to consider when you're treating someone who has a brain injury. And you may modify somewhat treatment, but if you still have the skills and ability to treat that depression, anxiety, substance abuse, So, does that feel good to people? Yeah,
This is a segue.
yeah,
Yesterday in the clinic, there's a lady that's 50 years old, I'm from Sept, and, yeah, integrated. And so she presents and wants a med-9 form signed off as disability. I've seen her 2 times now. It's disability. And she brings up a skull fracture at age 46 years later, and that she's told DHS that she has, and so it circles back with a med-9 form for me to sign it off as disability. And I'm like, I don't think she has any disability or not, so where do I send her?
yeah, that's a good
Or
question.
get assessment.
Yeah, so, I don't know if everybody can hear that question, but he had an individual come in 50 years old who wanted him to, sign a med form saying that she had a disability, med-9, saying she had a disability because of a skull fracture at the age of 4, but he's
But in
feeling.
my notes, it says without TBI.
Oh.
Now she's gone to DHS and circled back and said, oh, you have a brain injury, you need to go get this med-9. So it's the ticket to A and D, I've been down there for about a year, it's a service.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing about, I'm supposed to sign off so we get $169 a month to, to start the pathway for
Right.
this.
We'll talk a little bit about mechanisms of injury, but concussion brings in a whole world of confusion.
Yep.
As if brain injury didn't have its own world of confusion, but concussion definitely does, and, kind of that, proximity of the time of the injury to now, that's 46 years later. So, in terms of who you could send her to, I mean, a neuropsychological evaluation is the best option for someone, like her, because the injury was so long ago. A neurologist isn't going to likely be able to pick up on anything. Imaging likely won't pick up on anything, and it definitely won't tell you her function, right? So functionally, a neuropsychologist can put the links together to say, and even a neuropsychologist though can't really say, because of this injury at the age of 4, now you have this.
And it's not covered by that.
Yeah, all they can say is, okay, you have a history of brain injury, you have a history of X, Y, Z, and with the testing we did, it looks like you have, I'm making up stuff, short-term memory loss, you have inability to initiate some executive dysfunction going on. Therefore, we would say you have impairment that could possibly or plausibly be related. So that's what I would recommend, although those are expensive, but a good psychologist with a background in neuropsych, even if they're not board certified. Any board certified neuropsychologists in here? Okay, it's like, don't hurt me. A good psychologist, even if they're not board certified, can still do some of that teasing out, but gold standard is neuropsychologist. Okay, any other questions about the practice standard? And we just bring it up because we are still getting feedback from some of our clients. They tend to call the Brain Injury Alliance because it's a number that they know, or they tell their case manager that they're getting turned away for services. And what we're understanding, and I've met with the BHO directors and different folks, is that it's not necessarily that they're getting denied services, but it's an understanding that from the clinician saying, you need a specialty service and we don't have resources for that. So therefore, by default, denied services. So that's why we wanted to do training. We'll be doing training with the mental health centers too, in terms of how to work with someone with a brain injury, and we're hoping to help eliminate that. Now, there will be times when someone's so complicated, right, that it might be harder to serve, but typically, most people, your mental health centers, your providers are going to be able to support them, regardless if they have a brain injury. But knowing they have a brain injury is super helpful to how they support them. Other questions or comments about the practice standard? Okay.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about, we're just gonna do an overview of brain injury. So we're all on the same page about what we're talking about. So acquired brain injury is anything that happens to your brain after birth that's not degenerative. So MS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, that's not us. But traumatic brain injury and non-traumatic brain injury are two categories underneath that that we see the whole gamut. So the majority of our presentation is going to focus on traumatic brain injury, and obviously the practice standard guidelines focus on traumatic brain injury. But I will talk about non-TBI just briefly. TBI is any sort of external force to the head, whereas non-TBI is internal. And So a stroke is a brain injury. Anoxia would be like lack of oxygen to the brain, infection. Sometimes we work with victims of domestic violence and they've been strangled or choked and lost oxygen to their brain and are dealing with some deficits because of that. So that would be non-traumatic brain injury. But like I said, TBI is any sort of external blow to the head that causes damage within the brain. And that's an important thing to note is that a head injury and a brain injury are different, right? You can hit your head and you can get a laceration, but if your brain wasn't damaged, then it's different. So what we really focus on is when brain cells die and people lose functioning. So there are different classifications of severity, and I'll talk about how we define those. But just so you guys know, mild TBI and concussion are synonymous. So you'll hear somebody say, I had a severe concussion, which may be true, but it's not a severe TBI. Those are two different things. With respect to how injuries happen, your brain obviously is very gelatinous, and if it gets slammed up into the side of your skull or scrapes against bony ridges, your cells are going to die. And the majority of the brain cells don't grow back. So we obviously see people after stroke learning to walk and talk again, and that's the brain compensating in different areas, but you don't get those brain cells back that died. Typically, we see a lot of frontal lobe injuries and from falls or motor vehicle accidents or assaults, and so it's the front of the head that's being damaged, but often it's more of a global injury as well, because if you think about a car accident, you may be going forward and back, but then there are rotational forces as well, and sometimes the hemispheres can shift and all kinds of damage can happen in there. So it's more than just, where you actually hit your head. I talked about non-TBI, non-TBI, and you guys probably are familiar with stroke. It's either a blockage or a hemorrhage, and we see a lot of the same symptoms between these two groups, and that's kind of why it's all under one umbrella. So our services are very similar across the board. I think there's kind of this common misconception that people with stroke have more physical disabilities, whereas people with TBI have more cognitive, but there's a lot of overlap there. So again, we treat the populations very similarly. You guys are probably familiar with this, given the work you do, so I'm not going to go into it. And I also hate when people read the entire slide, so I'm not going to do that either. But I think what's most important is this frontal lobe area. It doesn't fully develop until your early 20s, right? That's why we have laws around voting, drinking, driving, things like that, because you can't make decisions until this is finished developing. And so if that's damaged during development or even afterwards, think about how these really important functions might be impaired and how that can make it difficult to function in society or have meaningful relationships. So doctors use a couple different ways to classify severity. If an individual was amnesic to the event, and if so, for how long, if they respond to stimuli. But a kind of quick and dirty way to do it is if they lost consciousness, and if so, for how long. I think we're kind of getting out of the misconception that you have to lose consciousness to be diagnosed with a brain injury. Most people I talk to nowadays seem to understand that obviously football players are sustaining concussions and continuing to play without losing consciousness, so we see that quite a bit. But I think it's important to note that you don't, even if you lose consciousness for half an hour, it's still considered a mild brain injury. And so that's really, these classifications are really about the injury itself, not the long-term impairment. So mild sounds like they're gonna be fine, right? Like if you're mildly ill, like you're probably gonna be fine. But unfortunately with mild TBI, we see a lot of really difficult consequences. And in fact, because the injury was mild, and maybe didn't show up on imaging, maybe they didn't even seek medical attention, it can be a really complicated disease or complicated injury. Any idea, and more clicker questions, any idea what the leading cause of TBIs are in the United States?
Some of you guys, I think, don't have clickers. Yeah, okay, sorry. Too late.
Didn't get your free question.
Yeah, we didn't get your free question, so don't feel left out.
Okay, so, this is what most people say, and motor vehicle accidents are the leading cause globally, but in the United States, it's falls. We see peaks at different age groups, so, 65 and over, obviously a lot of those are falls. 15 to 19, learning how to drive, playing contact sports, engaging in high-risk behaviors, maybe experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And then 0 to 4, unfortunately a lot of that is child abuse. Males are just typically more risky than females, so they're more likely to sustain TBI, almost twice as likely. It's really important to know that the way the CDC counts brain injuries is if you've been admitted to a hospital. So they collect surveillance data from all of the states on how many people are being admitted to hospitals and have a traumatic brain injury. But that doesn't include military hospitals, it doesn't include emergency departments if you go and are released, it doesn't include urgent care, primary care, and obviously all those individuals who sustained brain injuries and never sought medical attention. A lot of times people, like I've had a concussion and I did not seek medical attention. Domestic violence victims obviously are not necessarily seeking medical attention, or at least not staying overnight. So this number is a hugely underestimated. We think it might be closer to 10 million. Any idea how many people in our state have sustained a brain injury? Okay, so it's over 500,000, and that's adults who've had a traumatic brain injury. So that doesn't include youth, and it doesn't include those non-traumatic brain injuries we talked about, like stroke. So we're up there compared to other states with respect to fatalities and hospitalizations, probably due to our active lifestyle, high-speed rural roads, military presence, things like that. But with respect to the rest of the stats, we're pretty in line with the rest of the country. So just kind of to put that in context for you guys, of how many people in our state have brain injuries. The majority of brain injuries that occur are mild, so that's really important to know. And the majority of mild brain injuries will resolve completely. So a lot of times we give this presentation and people are like, I've had a brain injury, and I'm really freaked out. And don't be, because you will resolve. You're more likely to resolve than not. But for those that don't, it can lead to lifelong significant impairment. And it's really complicated injury. It can look like other disabilities. A lot of people get misdiagnosed with bipolar or ADHD. A lot of them, like I said, they don't seek medical attention. Concussions, mild TBIs are more of a metabolic injury than a structural, so you're not going to see that on a CT or an MRI. The symptoms can develop days or even weeks or even months later. So if you think about a kid who's had a concussion and they're pulled from sports and school, maybe they go home and rest, and then they go back to school, and it's not until their brain is being challenged cognitively that they're getting headaches and fatigue and sensitivity to light. And then it looks like they're making it up, right? Because it's like, oh, you just don't want to do your homework, you just don't want to go back to school. And that can be really difficult. Once you sustain one brain injury, you're at an increased risk of sustaining another one. And that's due to a couple different things. Brain injury can impair balance, but it can also make you more impulsive. So once you sustain a brain injury, you might engage in more risky behaviors. We see a lot of different things happen after brain injury occurs. Sometimes if it's more severe, they may not be able to drive, they may not be able to go back to work. Something like 8 out of 10 marriages fail after brain injury. School obviously can be a challenge because school doesn't stop and it's really hard to get back in the swing of things. So there's a ton of data out there about mental health and risk for criminal activity, substance abuse, and homelessness. So the incidence among the general population is about 10%. Among incarcerated, it's about 60%, and among homeless, it's about 40%. So obviously, individuals in these settings are more of them have brain injuries and or might be contributing to some of those behaviors. With respect to mental health, there's a lot of research out there. So we have full text articles and lots of citations I'm happy to send you guys if you're interested in more numbers. I just have a few here for you guys today. I think this first statistic is really important, that people with no pre-injury history of mental health, almost half of them will develop a mental health issue after a brain injury. We see most commonly anxiety and depression. It's just a devastating injury. You lose family, you lose friends. A lot of times your personality changes, and people don't get that, and people aren't willing to stick around and relearn who you are. Obviously, families are reporting a high number of emotional and behavioral problems. Suicidal ideation and attempts go up significantly. So it's an issue. Okay, Judy's going to talk about strategies and accommodations. Do you guys have any questions about what we just went over? Brain injury in general, how it affects a person? Yeah.
Do you guys provide climate back on the day?
Do we provide what?
Back.
There are a number of providers in the state that we refer to. We don't deliver those services in-house though. But biofeedback and neurofeedback, yeah.
For the day.
Yeah,
Biofeedback.
yeah, we refer to people who do that, yeah. There are a couple down here too. That's great. Any other questions?
Can I get your help with the sound? Yeah, that's why I put the speakers on. I have a little video to show you. So, we were talking about brain injury and whether you need to be a specialist or not, or, oh yeah, that's great. I have a hotspot. If you can't do it, don't worry, it's not hurting, I mean, the world won't end. If we can't get the sound or the video.
Are you guys seeing a lot of people with brain injuries in your line of work? Yes. Yeah. Once Judy goes into what brain injury looks like, you'll probably be like, oh yeah, a lot of people.
So while he's doing that, I do think that brain injury has been kind of mysterious to people and intimidating to people because it's really been living in a medical context versus community and behavioral health context. But in reality, a lot of the issues that people with brain injury are dealing with are very much behavioral issues and behavioral health issues versus kind of the acute medical consequences of brain injury. And of course, there are folks who have medical complications or physical disability as a result of brain injury, but a lot of what people struggle with are those kind of behavioral health issues related to the brain injury. And so, as we talk about strategies and accommodating folks with brain injury, first I'll kind of go through what does brain injury actually look like, and then what are some of those accommodations or strategies you can make or people can make to help support people with brain injuries. And I just want to say, don't overthink it. I mean, a lot of the strategies are very basic, very common sense strategies that you'll think, well, this is all there is to this. And you're doing a lot of times with other folks anyway. So we have a grant project right now to work in identifying brain injury in different criminal justice settings, and we have a partnership with the University of Dettmer and through their graduate school of professional psychology. And so it's young budding neuropsychologists who are helping us with doing some of the clinical screening. And I'll tell you, they all the time want to put in these really complicated recommendations and treatment plans, and I'm thinking, just dim the lights. so that's kind of what you'll see here. My strategies and accommodations are all about those really practical things that we can all do, regardless of what setting you're in. We'll be able to get there. Awesome. So this video kind of illustrates I know. I told Liz I'm going to talk to her boss and say she's using the computer. She She's out presenting all the time on her computer. You guys want a break?
Sure.
Let's do a break. Let's do a 5-minute break or so.
Restrooms are out to the right there.
To the festival that almost didn't take off. We have to wait. And it was like 30 spots. So